Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July already, 2023 Compassion Chat. My name is Susan Marshall. I am the author of Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours, and your host for these monthly Compassion Chats. We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month at 6:00 p.m. Central right here on Zoom. So we don't have to go out into this terrible heat. And I know here in Wisconsin, it's sweltering as it is absolutely everywhere around the country. So we're grateful for your presence with us this evening. We have met since March of 2021, and the purpose for Compassion Chats is really to bring experts, resources to this caregiver community. Primarily has been focused on those of us caring for or have cared for or will at some point care for dementia and Alzheimer's patients. But we're beginning to expand that focus a bit. And our guest for this evening is really someone I heard 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, Jeff, maybe, and has such important information, not only for us as caregivers, but for us as consumers to share with our families, with our colleagues, with our neighbors, with our friends. So I want to welcome this evening. By the way, this is being recorded, as all of them have been. So if you would please mute yourself while we are going through the chat. If you have questions that you don't necessarily want to speak up at the end, just drop them in the chat and we'll get to those questions as we near the end of Jeff's presentation and then our chat. So again, Susan Marshall, susanamarshall.com is where you can see this recording when it's completed, as well as the entire archive going back to March of 2021. So Jeff Kersten, who joins us this evening, is the Agency Liaison for the Bureau of Consumer Protection within the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. As the Agency Liaison, Jeff travels the state to help people like us in the public, in businesses, and law enforcement learn about privacy protection, data security, identity theft, and other areas of consumer protection. Jeff has over 12 years experience as a police officer and was a prior consumer protection investigator for the Bureau for Consumer Protection. So Jeff, welcome. You have lots of interesting information tonight on scams. Not the happiest thing to talk about in the world, but I think so very, very important, because they are springing up like bunny rabbits in the springtime. We'd like to start our chats getting to know a little bit about our guests. So give us a little bit of who Jeff is, and then tell us how you got to doing this work.
Sure, absolutely. So you heard about my background in law enforcement. I did that for about 13 years. And when I left law enforcement, I went to the private sector for a little while, and it was just time to get back into public service. And I saw an investigator spot open up at the Bureau of Consumer Protection, and being naive like I was like, I used to be a police officer. I know how to investigate things. So applied for the job, and lo and behold, got it, and was only in that position for about a year before this position, this agency liaison position, opened up, where to go out on the road and do presentations. And I've been involved in adult learning most of my career, teaching at the police academy and things like that. So again, I kind of just jumped in with 2 feet, and I was like, well, I know how to travel around with a laptop and give classes. So but had you met me in high school, if you thought I was ever going to have a job with public speaking, I was not that person. So do not know how I ended up here, but here I am. And Susan, you're absolutely right. I mean, not the most pleasant topic to talk about, right? All these scams. I mean, there's so many people out there that want to steal our money. They steal our personal information, and then they use that to steal our identities. And just like you, I get all of the emails, the text messages, the phone calls. These criminals are desperate to get their messaging in front of us, because honestly, they're making money doing it.
It's a crime. It really is a crime when you think about that. And as you and I talked, and I confessed, I fell prey earlier this year. We'll talk about that toward the end of the chat. But I was astounded, and I think the group will be too, as you walk through your presentation, at how many different scams there are.
Yeah, there are. And I do have a presentation here. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. Susan, do you want me to stop at that particular slide, or do you want to just save your story for the end? Or
Let's talk about what happened to me later, because
okay.
All
right, sounds good. So let me bear with me here quick. Let me share my screen. All right, there we go. That should be up for everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just well, you made a good point. It is a crime, these individuals that are trying to steal our money and our personal information. But I want to make a distinction right away between my agency and law enforcement. We're not a law enforcement agency. We don't have the authority to go after the criminals. That's law enforcement's job. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. We want to report it to law enforcement, give them a chance to go after the criminals, but then also report it to us at the state. And just like law enforcement, we can send subpoenas, we can try to track the money down. I think we're pretty good at helping people recover stolen identities if it's information that was lost during a scam. But even if we're not able to recover that money, I still think there's value in reporting it to us. We learn what scams are out there, what new twists on those scams are working. We can update presentations like this that might help out somebody in the future. Many victims have shared their stories with me and given me permission to share those stories in the hopes that it'll stop somebody else from falling victim to that same scam. Starting off here. Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say that notion of why should I report it is one that I'd like to come back to when you're finished working through your slides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we understand why somebody might be reluctant, embarrassed, ashamed. They maybe don't want to admit to family or friends that they lost money, that they fell for one of these scams. But if victims don't come forward, there's certainly nothing we can do. So I just say, give us a chance, reach out to us, let us take a look. No guarantees, but we're always happy to take a look and see what we can do for that victim. 5.2 million reports of scams to the federal government last year. Probably more concerning is at the bottom, is $8.8 billion lost, billion with a B. That's up 30% from the year before. Only 1 in 11 victims comes forward. There's another stat out there that says that. So we probably, for easy math, just need to add a 0 to the end of these numbers. And we're probably looking at, 50, 60 million scams and maybe 80 or $90 billion lost if it was all reported. So again, we urge victims to come forward so these numbers are more accurate. A lot of people find this slide interesting, that younger people fall victim to scams at a higher rate. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's just somebody in their 20s is more online, more willing to talk to strangers, more on social media, maybe doesn't think it'll happen to them, more gullible, dare I say. Maybe a combination of all of that. Now, if there's any good news for our younger folks, is on average, they just don't lose as much money. I was just at a senior center earlier today, and the seniors all laugh when I say that, because they all tell me, well, that's because when you're in your 20s, you don't have as much money. And it's no less devastating for that victim. If $50 or $500 cleans out the checking account, I mean, that's everything. All of a sudden, bills are due tomorrow. You can see the problem. Now, of course, you look at the other side of the slide here, and that's the bad news for our seniors, is that on average, they lose 3 times as much. And some of the stories I'll share with you this evening, I know this number says 1,600, but these criminals are good at figuring out how much money somebody has and figuring out ways to extract as much of that as possible. So tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've talked to individual victims that have lost. We certainly can't cover all the scams tonight, so I really hope to just kind of give people some red flags to look out for, and how the criminals want you to pay for the scam, how they want to get their hands on the victim's money is a big red flag to look out for. Upper left corner here, we'll start with gift cards. Gift cards are great. There's nothing wrong with gift cards. If you want to buy them and hand them out, and Christmas cards and holiday cards and birthday cards, great. That's what they're for, is giving as gifts. You're the recipient of these cards, use them. Again, there's nothing wrong with gift cards, but I can't stress this enough. If somebody's talking you into going and buying a gift card, in order to get out of trouble or pay for government services or legal fees or something other than your choice to go buy a gift card to give as a gift, 100% that is a scam. Now, why do the criminals want gift cards? It's kind of a two reasons. One, they can get their hands on that money immediately. The moment that victim gives that gift card number over the phone or snaps a picture of the card and text it or email it to somebody, that money is transferred off that card immediately. And it becomes very difficult for us or law enforcement to trace the money with a gift card. You know, you look at these cards, they look like credit cards, 16-digit account number on the front. They got a Visa MasterCard symbol, expiration date, CVV code on the back, but there's no name on that card. There's no account history. There's not much to track. If we send a subpoena to that gift card company, usually the response we get back shows one transaction of that money being transferred off that card onto the next card. We can subpoena the next card and the next card and the next card, and you kind of get the idea. It's really difficult to kind of, chase that money down the rabbit hole. But that's not the only thing to look out for. The other side of the screen, the right side of the screen here, if you don't recognize that symbol, that's Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a type of cryptocurrency. I don't have really enough time, or this isn't the right presentation to go into what cryptocurrency is, and is that a scam, or should I invest in it? Yeah, it's not really something I get involved in, but I'm here to tell you that it's becoming a preferred method of payment for the criminals. Just like gift cards, it's a way for them to get the hands on the money immediately. And well, you can't even subpoena Bitcoin. There's no place, there's no address, there's no corporate headquarters, there's no registered agent, there's nowhere to send a subpoena. So it's really, really difficult for law enforcement or us at the state to try to track that money. You can figure out what digital wallet it went to, but then figuring out who belongs to that wallet is really the challenge. Now, you might not know anything about cryptocurrency or specifically Bitcoin, but if you do a quick internet search for something called a Bitcoin ATM near me, I think you'll be surprised that how close you are to a machine where you can go and you can feed US dollars into this machine, and you just bought Bitcoin, even though you might not even know what it is. And criminals are talking victims into going to the bank, pulling out money, driving to one of these machines, feeding money into one of these machines. Victim just bought Bitcoin. And then they, just like gift cards, if they give that information over the phone or they snap a picture of that receipt, that money is immediately transferred into somebody else's wallet. It hits the blockchain, it's irreversible, and that money is lost. So a couple big red flags to look out for. Someone is talking you into going and buying Bitcoin, or gift cards, and it wasn't your choice to do this. Really good chance that is a scam. And of course, bank wire transfers fall into that same category. How do they scam us? Email, text, phone calls, that's the big three. We'll spend the most amount of time talking about scams that originate there, but they can pay for ads to pop up on social media feeds. They can pay for ads to pop up on your computer screens. They might even pay for something to show up in the mail. Just because it shows up in paper form in the mailbox doesn't necessarily mean you can trust it. But they certainly call us a lot. So let's jump in there. Caller ID, it's pretty much worthless. They can make your caller ID say whatever they want. They can make it look like the local police department or sheriff's department, the Social Security Administration, Red Cross, you name it. They might even put the real phone number for one of those agencies on your screen, but that doesn't mean that that's who's calling you. I really can't stress this enough, that when you're on the receiving end of a phone call, you just don't know who that is. You can't trust caller ID. You can't trust what they say, because criminals, well, they'll just lie to you. And then it's 2023. I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but this artificial intelligence, it's coming at us really fast this year. They can now use computers to mimic voices. So you might even recognize the voice at the other end of the phone, but it's getting to a point where you can't necessarily trust that. You're on the receiving end of a communication, you don't know who that is. We encourage individuals to not engage with the criminals. Don't Don't play games with them. Don't waste their time. Don't talk to them. Don't push buttons on your phone. The more engagement that you have, the more encouraged they are to call you. And honestly, talking into the phone, they could be recording your voice. You don't want to say things like yes. You really just don't want to say anything because, again, they record your voice. It only takes about 20 seconds of audio, and then they can then use a computer to mimic your voice and make you say whatever they want. I don't know. So Susan, this is a nationwide audience, or is this isn't Wisconsin specific, correct? Okay,
it is live, but it's recorded and seen by a national audience.
Okay, so some of the things I might talk about are kind of Wisconsin specific. Years ago, there used to be a Wisconsin do not call list that merged with the federal list. Federally, there's a do not call list that's out there. And I'm sure all of the listeners right now are frustrated because they still get all these scam phone calls, even though you're on the do not call list. And the way the do not call list works across the country is it's for telemarketers, and telemarketers that's a real business that wants to call you up and sell you a product or a service. And I believe this is true for the rest of the country, but I know it's true for Wisconsin. If you don't want to receive those calls, you can get on the do not call list. Even though it doesn't stop scam phone calls, I still think there's value in being on that list if that's available to you. Here comes an incoming phone call on my phone. I don't recognize the number. Well, I know it's not a real business calling me up to try to sell me something because I'm on the do not call list. So by default, that unknown number, it's most likely just a scam, and it makes it easier to avoid answering that call. If you're not on some kind of do not call list, well, trust me, you're going to get all the same scam phone calls you currently get because the criminals are not intimidated by do not call laws. But on top of that, you're going to get real phone calls from businesses, legitimate calls, and good luck trying to tell the difference. So I still think there's value in being on that list.
So Jeff, quick question here, if I can jump in just briefly.
Yeah.
If there's a call that comes in, I suspect it's a fraud, I don't know who it is, should I block that call?
Really good question. So I just wish it was that easy. So unfortunately, blocking calls, all you're doing is blocking that number that shows up on caller ID, and they never put their real phone number on your caller ID. That would make it too easy for law enforcement to track them down. I bet most of our listeners, it looks like a local call where most of their scam calls come from. The criminals found out a long time ago, you're not likely to answer some area code you've never heard of. Well, they know what number they're dialing, so they just make your caller ID look similar. Same area code, same prefix, last four just off a little bit. It's meant to catch somebody off guard that, oh, this must be somebody I know, and you end up answering. Even if it looks local, don't answer. If you do block those numbers, especially local numbers or what looks like local numbers, you're most likely just blocking your neighbors, businesses in the area. Who knows what number that actually is? We don't recommend calling them back either. That number probably belongs to somebody that has no idea that their phone number was even spoofed on your caller ID. Blocking doesn't really cut down on this. Now, you've probably noticed your phones are getting better and better. It'll tell you scam alert, telemarketer, medium risk, the screen turns red. That is a program that's being pushed out from the FCC, kind of requiring telecommunications industry to start authenticating phone calls. Now, somehow that call failed authentication. They still allow it to come through to your phone just in case you actually recognize the number. But your phone's basically telling you this is a scam phone call. Don't even waste your time answering it. So that's really the best advice. Just let it go to voicemail. You can always check voicemail later to see if you missed something legitimate. Does that answer that, Susan?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Of course, they don't just call us, they email us, they text us. What you really want to look out for in these, don't trust the phone numbers and don't click those links. All devices, Apple products, Android, Mac, PC, they can all be compromised if you click the wrong link. I'm sure you've seen these messages. The item you ordered just shipped, click here for tracking information. There's a problem with payment, click here to, fix it. Or somebody just charged $999 to your Amazon account. If it wasn't you, call this number to report fraud, or click here to, put a stop to it. All of those are just fake messages. just like phone calls, you're on the receiving end of a text or an email. You just don't know who that is. Sounds goofy, but you get a message with a link and it looks like it comes from a friend. It might be worth a voice call to that friend, or the next time you see him in person. Hey, did you actually send something to me? What is this? Is that link safe to click on? Because you don't want to compromise your electronic devices. You might see things like this pop up on social media feeds. Too good to be true. There's no such thing as sitting at home and filling out surveys and winning $500 and $1,000 gift cards. I always like to joke during my presentations that if I could sit at home and fill out surveys and win $1,000 gift cards, I probably wouldn't be sitting here on a computer talking right now. I'd be filling out a survey, because I'll just do one of those a day. That's pretty good money. The problem is, obviously, you never get to the end of these surveys. You get nothing to show for it. You give up all this personal information and just put your identities at risk. Skip right over that stuff. All right, let's talk about some actual scams. So there's a lot of tactics the scammers use to kind of manipulate us. And we're all human beings. I think we're all more alike each other than sometimes we care to admit. And it's easy for them to kind of push our buttons, if you will. And one tactic they like to use is they tell you something really scary, because if they can get you to panic about something or get upset or emotionally charged about a situation, we just don't tend to make very good decisions when we're in that state of mind. So one tactic, they pretend to be from the government, because then it's easy to say something scary. You owe back taxes, and if you don't pay them right now, they're going to send the police to your house and arrest you. Or they pretend to be law enforcement and just tell you have a warrant for your arrest. Or Medicare, your benefits are expiring, and get you to panic that something bad is happening. The new twist on Social Security I've been hearing about is your Social Security number was used in the state of Texas to rent a car. The police have the car stopped. They found blood in the car, evidence of drug trafficking, human trafficking. They hit all the buzzwords, get somebody to super upset. And by the time they get to the point of their pitch where they're pretending to be an attorney or a law enforcement officer, the victim's already not thinking straight. And by the time they start talking about buying gift cards or pulling money out of the bank and driving to one of these Bitcoin ATMs, it'll make sense in that moment. And I can just hope that people remember, oh yeah, gift cards, Bitcoin, and snap out of it and just realize that this is a scam, and just end that communication, hang up the phone, close the computer, and just stop. Now, will the government ever call us? I work for a government agency. My office certainly makes lots of phone calls every day. How about this? If I said, will the federal government call you out of the blue? I think we'd agree that that's no, that they'll send you something in the mail if they have legitimate business with you. But here's where it can get really tricky. I know you can go to your local Social Security Administration and you can set up an appointment for an agent to call you back. Let's say you set up that appointment for tomorrow at 2:00. And tomorrow, the phone rings. It's 1:59 p.m. and it says Social Security Administration on the caller ID. Is it? Is it also just a chance that you might have got a scam phone call at the worst possible moment when you're expecting a call? And that could be true as well. Now, let's be honest, you're probably going to answer that call, right? Because you do have an appointment. The voice at the other end of the call, just immediately ask for the Social Security number. I'd say pump the brakes a little bit. See if you can get them to prove they are who they say they are before you start handing over personal information. A real agent should know why they're calling you back, what question you had reached out about, what office you had contacted. Should put your mind at ease a little bit. I'm not sure if Social Security is doing this yet, but I know some departments have started to, when you make an appointment for a callback, they'll give you like a PIN number, and they'll tell you that when the agent calls you, they'll give you this PIN number. So then it's the real agent calling you. So kind of a multi-factor authentication with a phone call, if you will. So hopefully we start to see more and more of that, because otherwise we find ourselves in this standoff where we're on the phone with somebody and they're not sure who we are and we're not sure who they are, and nobody wants to talk, and it can get really tricky sometimes.
Well, so Jeff, that triggers a question, and that is, let's say it's 1:59 and you've got an appointment at 2:00. I pick up the phone. I say hello, expecting it's the Social Security Department. Do I let them identify themselves first before I say anything else?
I mean, I honestly don't know what Social Security's policies are. I know I talked to somebody recently from the Department of Veterans Affairs, and they've told me it's tricky for them because they're not allowed to talk to somebody on the phone until they know they have the correct person on the phone. So then we're kind of in this standoff situation where they can't talk to the person who just answered the call. The person who just answered the call doesn't want to verify who they are because they don't know who just called them, and it can get really tricky, to try to sort through this. And you can just do the best job that you can but you always remember, you can always hang up the phone. You can, if you get uncomfortable, if the hair in the back of your neck is standing up and something just doesn't feel right, trust those instincts, hang up. We can always make another appointment. We can always, whatever agency you're reaching out to, see if there's a way they can give you a code word or a pin or something to verify that it's actually them calling back and not just you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I have a story here for you of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It can just showcase how easy this can happen. I was at a sheriff's department doing a presentation, about a year ago, and a deputy told me about a victim to this utility imposter scam. So often the scammers will pretend to be with the power company, and it's a simple scam. They call you up. Of course, that's what caller ID says. Of course, that's who they say they work for. And then they tell you you're behind on your bill. Of course, they want to tell you something scary to put you on edge. Because now you're thinking, oh my gosh, did my last payment go through? What happened? Why am I behind on my bill? And then they tell you, we've got a crew on the way to your house to turn your power off. I need you to pay right now over the phone. I might be able to stop them. It was urgent. Take action now or bad things are going to happen. They always want you to make a decision quickly without having a chance to think about it. So this deputy told me about a lady that received that exact same phone call. You're behind on your bill, crew's on the way to your house. She's on the phone with them. She walks over to her living room window and she looks out. Guess what happens to be driving down her street? You can't make this up. A power truck, just by pure chance, happens to be coming down her street. Now put yourself in her shoes for a second. I mean, who wouldn't think you're talking to the real power company? Oh my goodness, they're here. They're going to turn my power off. She lost $5,000 over the phone that day. Now, I highly doubt she was $5,000 behind on her bill. That seems a little extreme. But like I mentioned earlier, once they have a victim on the hook, they're good at figuring out how much money somebody has and figuring out how to get as much of that as possible. I don't know exactly what tactic they used on her. I'm guessing late fees, penalties, whatever they can come up with to extract as much money as possible.
Wow.
Now, I hate to Monday morning quarterback a victim, but if we go back to what I said earlier, if you can always hang up the phone, you know what? What if we hang up on the real power company? That's fine. We can always call them back. We hang up on the criminal. Well, that's the desired outcome, right? Now, let's say we're getting ready to call the power company back because we want to make sure everything's okay. Don't trust the number that just showed up on caller ID. Don't trust the number that showed up in a email or a text message. Be really even careful with internet searches. You go to your internet search engine of choice, all the big ones, and you plug in the name of the power company and you hit search and you see that little business page pop up. A lot of times those numbers can get changed. You can't necessarily trust them either. You don't want to trust the top search results. Criminals are getting better at having their results listed higher. So how do we find the real phone number for the power company? Go to your bill. I guarantee your bill has a phone number on it. This kind of works across the board. Your last bank statement, credit card statement has a phone number on it. All those plastic cards in your wallet, flip them over to the back. They all have a phone number on it. Always do that little extra bit of homework to find that real phone number. And now you are the one who's reaching back out to the business. Now you know who you're talking to, and you can, hey, did you just call me? Is there a problem with my bill? Very likely you might find out there's no problem at all, and that was just a scam phone call and you were right to hang up on them. Tech support. So many ways this scam can go. Might start off with a phone call. They pretend to be with, Microsoft, Apple, Google, tell you something scary. Your computer's infected with a virus. But then they're super helpful and they're really friendly, and they pretend to be this IT professional that, you just sit back and relax, and they send you a link and you click on this link, and all of a sudden you're watching somebody else move that mouse pointer around on your screen. If you've ever seen that, that means somebody's in your computer. You never would let a stranger into your computer, or you shouldn't ever let a stranger into your computer, because once they're in, they can, who knows what they're doing while they're in there. They can install real bad programs, and they can look at all the files, and they have access to a lot of information on our computers. So if you've ever seen somebody moving that mouse pointer around on your screen and you don't personally know who that is, disconnect from the internet, get that to a trusted computer repair place, preferably local, get it scanned to make sure no bad programs are running in the background. Another version of this scam is it might start out with a pop-up window on your computer. They usually make this the same size as your screen, so you don't see the little X button up in the corner where you can close this window out. It takes up the whole screen. It's red, scary looking, says your computer is infected with a virus. Do not turn it off. Call this 1-800 number. I've even talked to people that have closed the lid on their laptop and they lift it back up and it's still there. And I've talked to people that have tried to hit the power button and the power button doesn't work. And so I don't know if they've been able to disable it or what was going on, but that's the moment of panic. Oh no, what do I do? It looks like there's no other option but to call that number. I've talked to a couple of victims lately that have called that number. One victim told me that before it was said and done, she was talking to go to the bank and pulling out $17,000. $17,000, how did they get talked into that? A new computer, less than $1,000, you could just start over from scratch. So that particular victim, they got into her computer and they tell her, oh no, your computer's infected with a virus, criminals are in your computer. Oh no, you do online banking on your computer. All your money is at risk. We need to protect your money. So they talked her into going to the bank, pulling out all of her money. They kept her on the line to drive an hour down the road to a Bitcoin ATM, a gas station that has a Bitcoin ATM in it. They're pretending to be with the fraud department, and they have her feed $17,000 into this machine. Hey, we're just going to temporarily put your money over here into this other account. And they tell you, don't trust the bank when the bank tells you that your money's safe. And, they tell you to lie to your bank so you can pull that money out. So she feeds this money into the Bitcoin ATM machine, prints off a receipt. She just bought Bitcoin, even though she told me she doesn't even know what cryptocurrency is. She read that information to them over the phone. Click, they hang up on her because they've got her $17,000 and they don't need her anymore. Talked to a gentleman last month at a VFW convention who told me he called the number. They showed him, the criminal that he was talking to on the phone got into his computer, he gave access, and he shows him 3 files on his computer that really scary looking. It looks like somebody tried to pull out $26,000, $23,000, and $18,000 out of his checking account. But they didn't get it. It was attempts. And then the person on the phone told him, hey, do you want to help us catch the criminals? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to wire, let's pick one of these. So they picked the $18,000 one. We're going to wire $18,000 into your checking account. We need you to go to the bank. Let's follow through with what these criminals are trying to do. Let's pull that money out. We're going to send it to them, and we're going to have law enforcement waiting for him at the other end. He made it all the way to the bank before the bank stopped him. And luckily they stopped him because it looked like there was a wire transfer going into his account for $18,000. There was a green deposit pending, but it was pending. It was a fake wire transfer. Had he pulled that money out, just like a bad check, that wire transfer would have bounced, would have not gone through. And then the bank would have contacted them and said, hey, we need that money that you pulled out. We need that back. Well, if you've already sent it somewhere else, you can see the problem. So many different ways that this scam can go. Romance, relationship, sweetheart scams. I believe the FBI says this is the #1 scam in the US right now. It took off in the last couple of years. So many more people are talking to each other online. I'm not just talking about the dating apps, but that's some of it, the sites like Tinder and the different dating apps. But if you do anything online nowadays, there's always a chat feature. You know, you play games online, you're playing cards, you're playing social media. Everything has a way where you can chat with other people. I'm here to tell you, there are criminals out there that will devote weeks, months, and even years into telling you everything you want to hear. They'll build up this relationship with you, but then something bad's going to happen in their life. And then they start asking for money. Some red flags that somebody could be involved in a romance scam. The other party has professed that they love you, but they've never met you face to face. They have all these excuses of why they haven't yet. You know, they want to, but they're in the military and they're serving overseas. You know, you're in one part of the nation and they're, you know, the other side of the country, and it's just too far to drive. Got to have some kind of surgery before I can get on an airplane. Opens up the door to start asking money for fake medical procedures. Often their stories will involve, you know, they have millions of dollars, but it's tied up in a divorce or a lawsuit or a trust fund, and they just don't have access to it right now. So if you could just help me out right now, you know, once this money comes through, it's going to be great. And I'll pay you back tenfold, and I can, you know, show up and sweep you off your feet. But of course, that's not true. And, you know, and they get the person to pay once, and then the next time and the next time and the next time. They're just limited by their imagination to come up with more excuses to just keep asking for more and more money. Another long-term scam are the lottery contest, the sweepstakes scams. I think nationwide, everybody's been paying attention to the big lotteries out there, the Mega Millions and the Powerball. And, you know, everybody wants to be that winner, right? You know, we've all thought about that day. I mean, this isn't something scary. Now, this phone call, you know, they tell you you won $30 million in a brand new Mercedes. And, you know, the film crew is going to be there tomorrow with a giant check and balloons, and it's happening. And you get so excited. And when we're excited about something, we tend to make the same bad decisions as when we're scared about something. Do people win stuff in life? Absolutely. You know, if you hit a jackpot at a casino or you win some money, might you be on the hook for taxes? Sure. But you know what? Just take my taxes out of my winnings and give me what's left over. If you're telling me I have to pull my wallet out of my pocket and I have to pay to get to my winnings, 100%, that is a scam. This is another long-term scam where once they get the victim to pay once, they just come up with another excuse. You know, usually the first payment is $150. Doesn't seem like much when you think you won 30 million. But once they get that first payment, it becomes easier for them to get the next one, the next one, the next one. And, you know, I can't see everybody. Obviously, this is a virtual presentation, but on the honor system, I think I have a funny little way I can kind of prove how easy it is for the criminals. A quick show of hands. Everybody that's listening to me right now, raise your hand if you like to admit when you're wrong. And I can only see a few people on camera right now, but I didn't see a single hand. We're all more alike each other than we like to admit sometimes. We're all the same. Nobody likes to admit when they're wrong. Once you pay once you fall victim to just that $150, in order to not make the second payment, in essence, you kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror, admit you were wrong, admit you were scammed, you fell for it, you lost $150, just stop and just cut your losses. It's actually easier psychologically to kind of bury your head in the sand, hold on to that sliver of hope that this is real and the next payment's going to be the one, and this wasn't a scam and this was real and my money's going to come through, or the next payment is the one where the person shows up and sweeps you off your feet. But of course it doesn't. And then the next payment and the next payment. And now all of a sudden you're just too financially invested, and it becomes harder and harder to walk away from these scams. The romance scams and lottery scams, I know of numerous victims that have been tied up in these scams for years and have lost tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're still continuing to send money because they believe it to be real. The grandparent scam. This is one where it's been confirmed the criminals are using artificial intelligence to mimic voices of family members. A lot of our grandchildren, the younger generations, they're more online. Everybody wants to be the next influencer. You know, they're posting videos on Instagram and TikTok and, you know, everywhere else. And these are publicly available videos. Like I mentioned earlier, it only takes 20 seconds of audio and they can use a computer to mimic that voice. So if you're a grandparent or just, a family member, you get a phone call from a family member, you can't trust caller ID. You can't trust what they say. And now you can't even trust what they sound like, even if you recognize the voice. How do you sort through this? The problem with this scam is that, real life happens, right? Our real family members sometimes don't make the best decisions in life. People get arrested, people get involved in crashes, things happen. We would hate to hang up on a real family member that's in distress. So how do you sort through whether this is real or not? One tactic you can use is just you and the immediate family members have a family password. You know what? If you get a phone call like this and just for a second you think it's real, ask for the family password. Here's a little hint. Even if you don't have a family password set up yet and you get a phone call like this, ask for the family password. Because if you're talking to a criminal, well, they don't know that you don't have one set up yet, and they don't know what the family password is. Most likely the next thing you hear is click, because they don't know how to fool you after you ask for the family password. I talked to a gentleman about a year ago that told me that whenever he gets this phone call, this is what he does. I think it's brilliant, so I share it with everybody. As soon as he gets this phone call, he immediately says, "Is that you, Jimmy?" And of course the criminal says, "Yeah, Grandpa, it's Jimmy." He doesn't have a grandchild named Jimmy. He offered up a fake name. And if the criminal latches onto that fake name, well, now you can feel good about hanging up on that call. You know that there's nothing legitimate about this. Often they'll tell you, shh, don't tell mom and dad. They want to keep it secret. The lottery scams, they do the same thing. Shh, don't tell your family. You don't want to ruin the surprise. If someone's telling you to not share information, another red flag that is a scam, or if they're trying to get you to lie. We already talked a little bit about fake wire transfers. There's a lot of check overpayment scams out there. You try to sell stuff online, you might get people reaching out to you that want to buy whatever you're selling, and they're going to offer you more money than what you're asking. Too good to be true, right? These checks are fake. They'll bounce, but they don't just bounce in a day or two. I've had bankers confirm this to me, that it can take weeks and even months before these checks will bounce. So the scam is they get you to deposit the check. Federal law allows you to pull those funds out even before that check has cleared. Well, if you choose to do that, and then that check is bad and didn't go through, the bank is going to need that money back. Well, often the scammers will tell you, they'll have some story of why this check is made out for this higher dollar value. You know what? You keep an extra $100 for yourself, send the rest back to me. Well, then when that check bounces, the bank's going to be asking for that money back. But if you've already sent it to somebody else, you can see the problem. Trying to reach about your car's auto warranty, just 100% fake. I actually received a postcard once about this. Just because it shows up in the mail in paper form doesn't mean you can trust it. They will tell you whatever you want to hear. They don't know if you're old enough to drive. They don't know if you have a car, new car, old car. They just will tell you whatever you want to hear, that they'll cover your vehicle. They just want to steal your premium. And when your vehicle breaks down, your situation never, ever, ever applies. So they never have to pay out. I actually talked to one gentleman recently who told me he was on the phone with these individuals, and he told them, "I don't think you're going to cover my truck. It's in the front yard on blocks and it doesn't have an engine." They put him on hold, music's playing for 30 seconds, and they come back on and say, "Yeah, sir, we'll cover it." Of course they'll cover it. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear because they're not worried about having to pay anything out. So skip right over this. This is all 100% fake. All right, charity scams. This gets tricky. We talked about the do not call list earlier. Well, guess who doesn't have to follow the do not call list? Charities. They're nonprofit. A lot of these are the support the police, the fire, the EMS, the Blue Line this association, the benevolent officer that association, the police ball. Who knows if that stuff's real? When I was a police officer, I used to get these phone calls. I have no idea if those organizations I'd never heard of before. So here's the thing. You're on the do not call list. You're going to get real phone calls from real charities that want you to give money. And you're going to get fake scam phone calls from fake charities that are just trying to steal your money. And there's no way to tell the difference. So the only advice I can give you is just don't let someone call you up and tell you where your money should go. If you want to give money to a charity, that's great, but you find the charity, you reach out to them, not the other way around. Investment scams, this is very much a Wisconsin specific slide here. If someone loses money to an investment scam, so they get talked into buying cryptocurrency or a timeshare, precious metals, playing the stock market, they tied up in a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme, a multi-level marketing business thing, and they lost money and they thought it was some kind of an investment option. Wisconsin residents should be reporting that to the Department of Financial Institutions. If you're not in Wisconsin, I'm not sure which agency would handle that for you, but Wisconsinites, they can file with us or DFI. If they happen to scams are scams, just report it to us at the state. We will get it to the correct state agency for you. My bureau and DFI communicate really, really well with each other. So we'll get that to the correct state agency to look into it. Just got a couple slides left here for you. There's no magic formula I can give you to totally stop this. I'm confident that criminals are always going to find a way to get their messaging through to us, but everybody that's listening to me right now, everybody's a consumer. We all pay for cell phones, landlines, maybe both. The first thing I would do is I'd call up my phone company. I'd complain about scam phone calls. A lot of phone companies have blockers they can put in place on your line. A lot of those blockers are free, but a lot of companies won't put those blockers in place until somebody calls up and complains. So that's the first thing I would do. If you have a smartphone, there's some other options for you, both iPhones and Android phones. You can, we talked about your phone already helping you detect scam phone calls. That's only going to get better and better. There's some call screening services you can activate on your smartphones that'll cut down on the amount of scams that make it through to you. There's some robocall blocker apps that you can search for on the App Store, and they'll cut down on the amount of robocalls that make it through to you. But then probably the most effective with our smartphones, and it works on Apple or Android, you can go into the settings on your phone and you can set your phone so that it will not ring unless it's somebody you already have programmed into your address book. So all those unknown calls, all those numbers you don't recognize, your phone doesn't ring, it doesn't vibrate, you don't even get tempted to answer it. It dumps all those calls right to voicemail. You can always check voicemail later to make sure you didn't miss something important. Now, some people really like that, but
uh-oh, you froze. You froze on us, Jeff. Darn it.
Yeah, we can always patch it together if he comes back.
Well, and so maybe, Jeff, if you want to just disconnect and reconnect like you did. I don't know, Josh, will we lose the slides?
Yeah, probably, but he can just share them again and I can patch it together really easily.
Okay, Jeff, so if you want to disconnect and rejoin us, we just have a couple of minutes left. Yeah. I want to ask him about, okay, well, what? These last suggestions were really good. It's like, holy cow, I'm never going to leave my house.
Yeah, it's true.
But such important information.
Yeah, no, it so is.
Number of scams and the creativity of the scams is really, really something else. I think we should see him here again in a sec. So Lori, Terry, do you have a question? If you want to shoot it in chat, anything you want to ask Jeff before we wrap up here, feel free. Here he is. We almost made it, Jeff.
we almost made it. I only had a few extra things to say. Just
I know.
Turn that service off and get that live call, and then turn it back on to avoid other calls. And then
Okay.
I don't need to share my screen anymore. I was just going to follow up at the end with, I hope this doesn't happen to anybody, but if it does, come forward, report it to us at the state. If you're in Wisconsin, if you're not in Wisconsin, I urge you to report it to your Bureau of Consumer Protection or Attorney General's office or whatever the appropriate agency is for the state that you live in.
Okay, so my reaction is probably split brain. First reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm never leaving my house again. I'm not answering my phone. I'm not touching my computer. It's like, oh my. So reassure us that, you know what, we still have to carry on, right? So that's one split brain.
Yes.
The other part of my brain said, thank you so much for all of this information. I had no idea. I had no idea there was this much that was going on.
Yeah, my intent is to not scare people. I don't want you hanging up from the Zoom call and throwing the computer in the trash and saying I'm never going on the internet again. You know, I have people, you know, tell me at the end of presentations, sometimes they like to tell me how, you know, they're not online, they don't do online banking, they don't do online bill pay, they don't even have an email address, and then they tell me like then I don't have to worry about this stuff, right? Like that protects me. And you know, that can backfire on folks. You know, I have another presentation where we talk about identity theft and we go into that side of things. And if you have no online presence, identity theft and fraud and scams, you know, you can be losing money for a longer period of time before that paper statement shows up in the mail and you can detect it. And so we have to, you know, find that balance. You know, online bill pay is incredibly secure and, you know, maybe even better than sending checks through the mail. You know, we're hearing a lot more. I've been seeing news articles a lot more about check washing lately. And so we got to find that balance of being online, you know, whether we like it or not, online is here to stay. And, but we just need to monitor our stuff and watch out for scams and, you know, just kind of navigate that as we live our lives.
So another question, Jeff, that I had as I listened to you, you said you are not law enforcement and you don't have the authority to really go after some of these things. Why or how? I guess walk us through. So I was scammed, which, you know, I shared with you before. I immediately went to the police department. They took all the information, they opened a case, we reported all the information to the FBI, but I didn't know to contact you or the Wisconsin Bureau of Consumer Protection. Is that something that we should just kind of, God forbid it happens, but if it does, should that be also right at the top of our list of people to contact?
For Wisconsin residents, I would say yes. You know, I mean, you're correct. I'm no longer law enforcement. You know, I wear a different hat now. And so I certainly cannot speak for law enforcement, but I've certainly talked to many victims that when they reach out to law enforcement, they hear that there's not much law enforcement can do for them. You know, and I certainly understand that, you know, the criminals might not be in that town, might not be in that county, might not even be in our state or country. They could be overseas. And so it makes it really difficult on law enforcement to track down somebody that's out of state or even out of the country. You know, if we're just another option, you know, so if I always just like to present it as, you know, there's no harm in reaching out to us, no harm in giving us a chance to look at it, seeing if there's something that in there that we think that, you know, we could dig into or try to help somebody get money back, or if identities are stolen, we're really good at helping people recover identities.
Okay, so play this forward. You have tons of information from lots of people who have been victims. What can you do, or what do you do with that information in terms of creating, I don't know, new products, or so what do you do with the information that you get?
Sure. So, I mean, you know, the rest of my bureau, we have a mediation department, investigations department. They're always looking at trends. We send out press releases, consumer alerts to be on the watch out. You know, we kind of see some of these scams kind of, you know, have, you know, all of a sudden one particular scam will take off in the area. And so we'll alert consumers about that. There's a couple of us outreach people that go around, and so we can talk about what, you know, is happening in, you know, in real time, you know, what we're seeing more of. Well,
and that
answer your question. Yeah, there was something else.
That's helpful, but those alerts. So if there is, for example, in Southeast Wisconsin, a particular, let's say it's the grandparent scam, and I actually knew a couple people who were victims of that. How would we know, how do you send that information out to the public, and or where might we go online, right? Yeah, what do you trust online? To discover that that's what's happening.
Sure. So consumers can go to our website. It's datcap.wi.gov. So it's DATCP, stands for Department of Agriculture, Trade, Consumer Protection at wi.gov. They can sign up for consumer alerts. So then when we post one of those, they'll get a notification. Consumers can also follow us on our social media accounts. I think Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are the big ones that we have. And you can see information related to consumer protection posted there as well. But when we get that information, we internally we're looking for trends and monitoring things like that, and deciding when to put out releases and updating the PowerPoint and the presentations that we go out on the road and deliver. We also report numbers up to the federal government. So that very first slide that showed that 5.2 million reports, that's probably woefully underreported. The more that victims come forward and report this to us, that number could potentially be more accurate.
That is absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough, Jeff, for taking the time to be with us. This information is so very important, and I don't know how else we learn except for people like you coming and sharing the knowledge you have in a format that we certainly can understand and perhaps some have experience. So really appreciate it. For those of you who are on with us now, and for those who will see us later, SusanAMarshall.com is where you will be able to see this recording in about, 3-4 weeks. And Jeff, thank you again. We're so grateful for your time tonight. And personally, I'm very grateful for the work that you do. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me tonight.
All right. Thank you, everyone. SusanAMarshall.com. Stay tuned. We will see you again the 4th Tuesday. So whatever date that is next month in August, we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.